Good evening, sir. You're not audible, sir. So you have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Now I'm audible.
Am
I audible?
So you have to unmute yourself, sir.
I'm unmuted at the moment.
Just a minute.
Am I audible now?
Can you hear me now, sir?
Oh yes, I can hear you fine.
So welcome you all for this 11th episode of the OcuHealth Escapes. Today is 29th of October and 2021, and this is our monthly update for OcuHealth related news updates, local, regional, and global. And this is conducted every month, last Friday at 6:30 p.m. So the faculty is, as usual, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, who is our resource person for this particular episodes of OcuHealth Escapes, and for this ENOC DigiConnect webinars also. For introduction to everyone, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain is Senior Consultant Health in Indian Railways, and he's also Vice President of AUSD. And he is Fellow Award of Indian Public Health Association, and he is also Fellow Awardee of Association of Environment and Occupational Health. And he has published more than 145 scientific papers in national, international conferences, journals, and books, and a lot of fellowships, awards by WHO, National Institute of Health, and Canadian Society for International Health and International Clinical Epidemiological Network. And he is also scientific committee member of the EPICO, and he has been elected as. Let us congratulate you, sir, for your selection and election at EPICO, that is Scientific Committee for International Commission on Occupational Health on Epidemiology, and your tenure will be for till 2024. So you're most welcome, sir, for starting your 11th episode of OcuHealth Escapes. That's floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep, and thank you for the nice words that you spoke. I do not know how much I deserve them, but all the same, thank you so much. Today is a special episode of OcuHealth Escapes, where we will see a diverse range of topics on environmental and occupational health. And all these developments have occurred in that past 1 month. And imagine how much the world changes in 1 month. That would be evident at the end of this episode. So let's see the gamut of topics that we're going to cover in this episode of OcuHealth Escapes. Next slide, please. First, we will take a look at the International Lead Prevention Week 2021, which is happening from 24th of this month to 30th of this month. Then we will take a look at October air quality surprises, but smog on the horizon with the situation in North India, especially Delhi and NCR. COP26, a reminder for us to set our net zero target and how India plans to make its stand clear at COP26, which is both the issues are important because this will determine our future, not only our future, but the planet's future as well. We shall also take a look at ILO adopting the code of practice on safety and health in textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear industries. The health argument for climate action also will be taken up, and how a new government health scheme will benefit India. The new health scheme which has been announced this week, we shall take a look. Center to set up 2 mobile hospitals for better health response. We will take how it affects the occupational health physicians. Yesterday, the EPICO 2021, that is the 28th International Symposium on Epidemiology in Occupational Health, just concluded, having 6 days of intense scientific activity. We shall take a look at a few issues emerging out of that. The 2021 Global Congress on Health and Climate Change, we shall introduce this conference to you, and also we shall introduce the ICO 2022 Congress as well. So let's go to take up the first topic. That is the International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week 2021. If you see this child is going on a ladder. He's playing, but look at what surfaces he's touching. He's touching a painted pipe, and the paint contains lead. So the child is exposed to lead. Unknowingly, he is repeatedly exposed to lead. Next slide, please. The International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week 2021, the working together for a world without lead paint. That is the theme of this year, 24th to 30th October 2021. The WHO, UN Environment Program, UNEP, governments, civil society organizations, health partners, industry, and others will organize activities and events during the 8th International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week. This week of action is an initiative of the Global Alliance to Eliminate Lead Paint with Lead Paint Alliance, which is jointly led by UNEP and WHO. The primary goal of the alliance is to promote the global phase out of lead paint through the establishment of appropriate legally binding measures to stop the manufacture, import, export, distribution, sale, and use of lead paints in every country. International Lead Poisoning Prevention Week is an opportunity to draw attention to the need for action on lead paint and other sources of lead exposure. If you look at the band in this slide, ban lead paint, learn the risks, join the action, eliminate lead paint. These are the three areas which we need to act upon. Next slide, please. Lead is toxic. Lead exposure is especially dangerous to children's developing brains and can result in reduced intelligence quotient, that is IQ, and attention span, impaired learning ability, and increased risk of behavioral problems. So lead is toxic to multiple body systems, such as our central nervous system and brain, the reproductive system, kidneys, cardiovascular system, blood and immune system. Next slide. The toxic effects of lead: brain and nerve damage, speech, language, and behavioral problems, anemia, reduced growth, reproductive problems in adults, decreased mental ability and learning difficulties, hearing problems, high blood pressure, kidney damage, and digestive problems. Look at the range of toxic effects that occur due to one single element, that is lead. Next slide, please. Lead is toxic, that's a fact. It is harmful to everyone and damages the brain, kidneys, liver, blood, and reproductive system. It is toxic to young children, it is toxic to adults, and it is toxic to pregnant women. In adults, lead exposure increases the risk of ischemic heart disease and stroke. In pregnant women, lead exposure damages many organs, but also affects the developing fetus. In young children, they are most vulnerable. Their nervous system is still developing, and they absorb 4 to 5 times more than adults, which can cause intellectual disability, underperformance at school, and behavioral issues. And there is no safe level of lead exposure. Next slide, please. Lead exposure can occur through inhalation of particles released by industry or recycling. It can occur through ingestion of contaminated soil or dust from decaying lead paint, particularly when children play on the ground and put toys or fingers in their mouths. Lead-containing products such as lead-glazed ceramics and some traditional medicines or cosmetics. It can also occur, exposure can occur due to food or water contaminated with lead. Again, to remind you, there is no safe level of lead exposure. Let's look at a video where WHO talks about how to prevent lead exposure.
We're talking about preventing lead poisoning today. Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith and these are WHO's Conversations in Science. We are talking to Leslie Onion today. Welcome, Leslie. Leslie, explain to us exactly how big a public health problem is lead poisoning and who are the people at risk?
Thank you for the invitation, Vismita. Lead has a long and dark history, and the knowledge of the effects of lead go back as far as Roman and Greek times, so almost 5,000 years. Today, WHO estimates that almost 1 million people die from the effects of lead exposure. We're all potentially at risk from exposure to lead, but there are 3 groups we're particularly concerned about, and these are children under 5 years of age, pregnant and lactating mothers, and adults who are occupationally exposed. The effects of lead can often go unrecognized because they can be insidious and fairly mild, such as anemia, constipation, abdominal cramps. However, it's the neurological effects that we're most concerned about, and these particularly affecting children. So the neurological effects themselves can range in severity from irritable behavior, clumsiness, right through to more serious life-threatening neurological diseases and effects such as encephalopathy and coma, convulsions and death. Adults are also affected, particularly cardiovascular diseases and renal diseases. These are affecting occupational groups in particular. Exposure to lead is often not serious in an acute incident, but the repeated exposure at low levels can give rise to these severe neurological impacts that last a lifetime.
Leslie, describe to us the sources of lead poisoning around us.
There are a large number of sources of potential lead exposure. We already have taken action on a number of these. For example, the outlawing of leaded petrol, the controls on use of leaded water pipes for drinking water and so on. But there are still many other sources. Leaded paints, the use of lead in decorative and household paints is a concern. But there are a variety of other sources too. We still can find lead in drinking water and food. It's found in some traditional medicines and cosmetics, and in other household sources, glazed pottery and so on. The mouthing of objects containing lead is a particular danger for children. Small objects such as fishing weights and curtain weights can easily be swallowed and then have a lasting effect once remaining in the body. But there's also the mouthing of amulets and toy jewelry and so on. A particular growing source of lead exposure comes from the recycling of lead acid batteries. And these are a growing need in our society, for whether it be for electric vehicles, whether it be for small-scale uninterrupted power supply. But the recycling of these batteries is often done under very poor conditions, often within homes as a sort of cottage industry in developing countries, and therefore whole communities and families can be affected.
Leslie, WHO and partners are observing a Lead Poisoning Prevention Week to raise awareness and call for action to prevent lead poisoning. Why is this important even in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, in the pandemic, we often find people spending more time at home than they had done before. And obviously, if their home is contaminated through the presence of lead-containing paint, that can be causing dust inside the house. But also, people might want to get engaged in hobbies which involve exposure to lead, such as soldering of electronics or making ceramics with glazes, or oil painting, because oil paint still can contain lead. So there is often an increased hazard if spending more time in these contaminated environments.
What can people do to prevent lead poisoning?
There are a number of things that people can do to prevent lead poisoning. I think in terms of the issue of lead paint, you could check to see whether your house contains lead paint before embarking in any major renovation projects. Avoiding cheap, brightly coloured toys, jewellery, and other things that children can put in their mouths, potentially swallow. Also important would be to store food and drink in preferably glass containers. Certainly to not store food in in tins that can have solder inside them containing lead. I know that's a sort of common practice to reuse plastic containers these days, but sometimes these plastic containers can come from lead acid batteries and other sources, so be very careful there. Finally, talk to your healthcare provider if you have any concerns.
Thank you, Leslie. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time, then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
So you heard how wide could be the exposure to lead. Could I have the slide, please? Next slide, please. So from lead, we go to another concern in the environment, that is farm fire set to ignite air pollution crisis. And we are nearing the fulcrum or the center of the crisis, beginning from Diwali. November would be the time when farm fires reach its peak in entire northern India. In fact, in the world, the highest number of farm fires in November occur in northern India. The capital's air quality plunged back into the poor level on Wednesday as levels of fine pollutants originating as smoke in farm fires shot up. So satellite view is visible. You can see how farm fires are raging. Fires in Punjab and Haryana, you can see, but it's lower than the previous 3 years. But all the same, the quality of air is deteriorating and is likely to deteriorate further around Diwali and after Diwali. Next slide. Noxious air is fueled by stubble fire, PM 2.5 levels, 5-year averages you are seeing, and Delhi's local pollution sources being waste burning, dust and vehicular emissions, frigid winters, cracker bursting during weddings and New Year Eves. These are the causes, and the problem will peak from November 1 to November 15, touching 285 microgram per cubic meter, which could be severe PM 2.5. Next slide. So toxic metal mix poisons Delhi's air. So look at the range of toxicity in our environment. Fine particles, Delhi, Ludhiana, Patiala, Panchkula, Visakhapatnam, and Jaisalmer. High concentration of heavy metals was found in Delhi's air. It was the highest among all cities surveyed. High levels of cadmium, arsenic, and lead was found in Delhi's air that are known to cause lung and nasal cancer, kidney and bone damage, hypertension, and respiratory disease distress. 413 school students between 14 years and 17 years were surveyed. Their detailed health assessment was done, and they underwent a lung function test. Symptoms among these 413 children of 14 to 17 years of age were breathlessness in 75%, itchiness of eyes in 24%, sneezing and runny nose in 22%, cough in the morning 20.9%, skin rash in 19.4%, phlegm in the morning 18%, phlegm during the morning for at least 3 hours, 27%, asthma in 1.7%, and inhaler use in 0.7%. Heavy metals in Delhi's PM 2.5, zinc is 615, while last year it was 379. Lead, it is now 466 instead of last year it was 233. Molybdenum, 278 compared to 123 last year. Cadmium, 21 against 8 last year. It causes lung cancer, kidney, and bone damage. Manganese, double of last year. 8 last year, this year 16. Arsenic, which causes respiratory and vascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, and skin disease, 11 compared to 2 in 2019. Nickel, while it was 0 in 19, now it is 5. Selenium, yeah, it was 0.6 last year, now it is 5 times. Mercury, it was 0 last year, now it is 0.2. Imagine the exposure to toxic air how much damage it can cause, how many damages it can cause in the entire human body. Next slide, please. So Delhi has started taking lead while announcing the 10-point action plan for the capital, for the smog in the winter, dust control, stubble burning, waste burning, smog, e-waste park, pollution hotspots, vehicular pollution, green war room, green Delhi app, and firecrackers. These are the 10-point action plan where each will have a focused action on the ground. Currently, the air pollution may be under control, but it will start rising with stubble burning in the neighboring states in winters. So 75 teams monitor construction sites and use of mechanical sweepers, use of Pusa biodecomposer on 4,200 acres of basmati and non-basmati fields, over 250 teams to inspect residential areas and dumping sites, a 16-member team to evaluate performance of the Connaught Place smog tower, new park to be built in Delhi to prevent e-waste pollution, identification of pollution hotspots through Green Delhi app, 500 personnel to keep check on PUCs and scrapping old vehicles, dedicated team to strengthen the war rooms set up last year, an upgraded app to boost participation to be launched. The government has banned the use, sale, and purchase of firecrackers. Next slide, please. Delhi pins hopes on power of 10. As I told you just now, this will be the Delhi's test, how much it can implement what it has planned to do. I just now told you the 10 points which are listed at the bottom of the slide as well. Dealing with farm fires, prevention of open waste burning, smog tower, identifying, monitoring pollution hotspots, upgrading the Green Delhi app, dust control, strengthening green war room, banning firecrackers, controlling vehicular pollution, and e-waste park. Look at the challenge in implementation and how much diverse action is required. So unless people cooperate and participate, nothing can happen. It has to be a people's movement for their own health. Next slide, please. Farm fires to worsen toxic mix. AQI on Diwali in past years, 16, 431, 2017, 319, 2018, 281, 2019, it was 337. And look at 2020, 14 November, 414. And so wait and watch for Diwali 2021, which is on 4th of November. And imagine what may happen. Farm fires between September 1 and October 26 is shown at the bottom. So you can imagine the complications. Next slide. October air quality surprises, but smog is on the horizon. Next slide, please. Air quality this October is the best in at least 4 years. PM 2.5 concentration in Delhi is shown in the last 4 years with red of 2021 in red. One metric of air pollution available more consistently than others is a correct concentration of PM 2.5 particles or particles smaller than 2.5 micrometers white that penetrate deep into the lungs and bloodstream. On 18 of the first 25 days of October, the 24-hour average of PM 2.5 concentration in Delhi was less than in all the years after 2018. It suggests that air quality in October has been much better. To be sure, October 2021 has had 4 days when PM 2.5 concentration was in poor or worse category. Why is this comparison limited to after 2018? The Central Control Room for Air Quality Management shows that PM 2.5 data is available from 40 different stations of Delhi. However, only 35 of them have consistent data from 2018 for October. In 2017, this number falls to 15. This comparison is limited to after 2018 so that we have a sufficient number of stations to better represent Delhi's air. And quality also remains comparable across years. This means that it is possible that Delhi's air quality is better this October than in a longer time period than 4 years. Next slide, please. Despite higher mobility and economic activity, mobility levels in Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi are shown in the graph. Delhi is shown in red, Punjab is shown in violet, and Haryana is shown in blue. The reason good air in October is surprising is because movement of people and economic activity is both higher this year than in 2020. An improvement in air quality 2020 as it did happen during the 68-day lockdown starting March 25. Could be explained because the sources of pollution were shut. Google mobility data shows this is not the cause for improved air in October 2021. Mobility levels in Delhi as well as in the neighboring northwestern states of Punjab and Haryana are far higher this October than last year. An analysis published in the Hindustan Times on October 26 showed economic activity is also higher this October than at the same time last year. Next slide. Weather, not sources of pollution, is the likely reason for better air this October. As the above data suggests, vehicular and industrial sources of pollution are unlikely to have driven the improvement in air quality. There is a third source of pollution that becomes important at this time of the year: farm fires in Punjab and Haryana. Data shows that farm fires are also somewhat lower this year, especially in the second half of the month when the number of fires is usually more. On 8 days until October 25, farm fires were the lowest since 2017. 5 of these 8 days have come after October 15. Total rainfall up till October 15 is shown in the bottom graph. One reason for a lower number of farm fires is that paddy procurement was postponed from October 1 to October 11. This could possibly have delayed clearing of farms for next crop, which is why the stubble is burnt. Another likely reason for lower number of fires is the rainfall this October. Until 8:30 a.m. on October 25, rainfall in Punjab and Haryana has been 290% and 192% more than the average rainfall for the same interval between 1960 and 2010, also called the long period average, according to the Indian Meteorological Department's gridded rainfall database. Such rainfall, apart from preventing fires, has also likely cleared existing pollutants in the air from other sources. In not only Punjab and Haryana, but also in Delhi, the rainfall this October has been much higher than in all years for which comparable air quality data is available. Next slide, please. Good air dependent on weather is not sustainable. Average maximum temperature in the last 1 week is shown in the graph, where 5 years have shown 2017 to 2021, where 2021 is in red. It is the farm fires have just been delayed. It is likely that farmers will be even more compelled to take the faster route of burning the stubble to clear the fields for their next crop. This can possibly bring an even bigger peak in air pollutants or air pollution later on. This situation can also be complicated by the trend in temperature so far this October. The maximum temperature in Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi, especially in the past 1 week, have been lower than the past 4 years for which air quality data is available. Maximum temperature are daytime temperatures. A higher temperature during the day prevents accumulation of pollutants close to the ground. This has been prevented so far because of rainfall. Without a curb on the sources of air pollution, a quick reversal to bad air quality days will not be surprising. But for now, breathe. So wait for the upsurge from November 1 to 15. Next slide, please. COP26 is a reminder for us to set our net zero target. Leaders and policymakers from across the world will gather in the Scottish city of Glasgow starting this weekend to attend the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, also called COP26. So we shall examine 5 factors that make COP26 an event to keep an eye on for both India and the world, and how to understand India's attempt to chalk out fresh targets and its fight against climate change. Next slide. 1.5 degrees centigrade target for warming will be breached soon unless emissions are deep cut. The conference comes against the backdrop of an alarming report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is IPCC. The threat of a human-induced climate change disaster is now widespread, rapid, and intensify, the report said in August. The IPCC made it amply clear that the target set at COP21 in the 2015 Paris Agreement of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels was beyond reach. The threshold could be crossed as early as in the next 2 decades, and the planet is now almost set to warm by 2.5 to 4 degrees centigrade by 2100. India itself has seen a 0.7 degrees centigrade increase in surface air temperature during the last 120 years, a report by the Ministry of Earth Sciences has found in March. The warming environment has contributed to more frequent spells of localized heavy rain, droughts, and floods, and an increase in the intensity of tropical cyclones in the past few decades. The Ministry of Earth Sciences report noted. Next slide. Despite low per capita emissions, India turns heads as the 4th largest emitter. A key part of the fight is to set a net zero target, the year when a country expects to start absorbing as much carbon as it emits. The US, the EU, and Japan see that year by 2050 and China by 2060. However, India is yet to declare a target, despite being the 4th largest emitter. India argues on the lines of parity, emphasizing the polluter pays principle. The current carbon dioxide levels are a result of accumulation over decades, and India historically accounts for a minuscule proportion of the carbon dioxide levels compared to rich countries. Despite rising per capita emissions, India is almost 60% behind the global average. The time may be lapsing for such arguments, though. Technological advancement now allow India to adopt clean fuel more in sectors such as transport and power, while prioritizing efficiency measures in sectors where dirty fuel is unavoidable. Next slide, please. India is among the most vulnerable countries to the fallouts of weather changes. If you look at the map of the world, you can easily look at the color, which is India is ranked 7 out of 130 countries. India is already bearing the brunt of an injured environment. Extreme weather events have become more common over the last 2 decades, and the IPCC report noted that droughts, heat waves, and cyclones would only get more frequent in India in the coming years. So much so that India was the 7th riskiest place for climate change based on fatalities and gross domestic product loss because of extreme weather events, according to an index of 180 countries by German non-profit organization German Watch in 2019. India lost the most lives to bad weather that year. Being home to the largest number of poor in the world, India is additionally vulnerable. A report by the Council on Energy, Environment and Water found that more than 75% of India, home to more than 638 million people, are extreme climate event hotspots. As many as 250 extreme events took place during 1975 to 2005, rising to 310 within just 15 years since 2005. Next slide, please. Generation from renewables needs to catch up with rising installed capacity. India committed to the 3 goals for 2030 in Paris. These include bringing emission levels per unit GDP down 33 to 35% from 2005 levels, boosting non-fossil fuel sources to 40% of installed power capacity, and creating a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. India has nearly achieved the first 2. As of September, non-fossil fuel sources, including large hydro and nuclear, comprise 39.6% of installed capacity, and emission intensity has dropped 24% since 2005. But there is a catch. With rising GDP, decreasing emissions intensity does not necessarily mean net emissions are also going down. Moreover, going from installed capacity to smooth integration of renewables in the power grid is an uphill task. Just 12% of India's power comes from renewable sources, despite 25% generation capacity. India may claim early success, but it is far from saving the planet. Climate Action Tracker rates India's actions as highly insufficient. No wonder the pressure to declare a net zero target is mounting from the rest of the world. Next slide. So we have to look ahead. Though India may reach net zero later than China, its emissions will be lower. However, India may not be in a rush to declare a net zero target. It may remind the world of the common but differentiated principle. Besides, the process needs consultation with stakeholders and coordination across sectors. China cannot be a benchmark. Its income levels is 5 times that of India's, and its emission could peak as early as 2030. For India, assuming a 5.6% annual growth, that year could come out before 2040, pushing its net zero to around 2070, a CEEW analysis suggests. This is true for most developing countries falling in India's income bucket. But for a global net zero by 2050, not only should advanced economies reach there much before that, they also must support developing countries through sustained investment. With a new UN report saying the rich world is not financing this fight enough, this would be a key point of discussion at COP26. So the focus should be on financing, the climate finance. Next slide, please. So we shall now take a look as to how India plans to make its stand clear at COP26. Leaders from 120 nations will meet in Glasgow from 31st October to 12th of November to discuss ways to curb harmful greenhouse gas emissions and restrict global warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. So we shall have a look at India's goals at COP26 Glasgow Climate Change Conference. Next slide, please. This is the climate emergency. A UN report this week warned that world was on track for an average temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius this century if the only steps it takes are the commitments announced till now. Next slide. How bad are things at present? Greenhouse gases emissions from human activities have already increased the Earth's temperature by 1.1 degrees Celsius since 1850. Over the next 20 years, temperatures are likely to go up by 1.5 degrees Celsius. At 2 degrees Celsius of warming, heat extremes would reach critical tolerance thresholds for agriculture and health. A UN report this week warned that the world was on track for an average temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius this century if the only steps it takes are the commitments announced till now. The 2.7 degrees Celsius rise in temperature breaches the 2015 Paris Agreement target of 2 degrees Celsius. Now, what does the world expect from India? Being the largest emitter of greenhouse gases after the US and China, countries have been pushing India to commit to a net zero deadline, the year by which India's emissions will equal the greenhouse gases taken out from the air through carbon sinks. The world would also like to see India's national commitments to include its ambitious plan to generate 450 gigawatt of energy through renewable sources. India says net zero by 2050 could constrain the country's economic growth. The second, it says, depends on getting promised finances and the technology from rich countries. So we should look at the third aspect. Next slide, please. Who is in the Indian delegation? Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be at Leaders Summit on 1st and 2nd November. Environment Minister Bhupender Yadav, who is also the Labour and Employment Minister in the Union Cabinet of India, will be assisted by a team of officials from the Ministry of Environment, Finance, New and Renewable Energy, Earth Sciences, Water and Agriculture. Additional Secretary, Environment and Forest, Richa Sharma, is India's chief climate negotiator. Next slide, please. What are India's key demands? India has said it is open to all options, provided it gets assurances that developed nations will deliver on promises of $100 billion annually to help developing countries transition to clean energies. India needs not just promises, but the cash coming in to fund the change over from coal to green energy. A second demand is for the world to share green technologies. A third demand is that the pledges made on carbon credit markets should be fulfilled. and nations responsible for the crisis should compensate those suffering the consequences. And all three demands are fair demands. So what will India's stance be? India is going to Glasgow with a positive mindset and will engage proactively on issues that involve climate change. This is what the officials said in New Delhi. This indicates India will not play deal breaker. India is expected to press hard for finances and technology from developed nations. Our Prime Minister will highlight India's aspirational goal of generating 450 gigawatt of energy from clean sources and the National Hydrogen Mission. India may say it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions provided developed countries take stronger action to control their emissions. So it's a balanced approach that India is going to put forward at Glasgow at COP26. So let's watch what happens during the next 2 weeks and how India is able to achieve its demands and its goals. Next slide. Now, we turn over to another important event that happened in the last 1 month. That is the draft code of practice on safety and health in textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear, made out by International Labour Organization, because during the meeting of experts to discuss and adopt the draft code of practice on safety and health in textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear, I must say, ICO, that is the International Commission on Occupational Health, was part of this meeting, where the ICO president participated in the meeting of experts. Next slide, please. ILO adopting code of practice on safety, health in textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear industries. More than 60 million workers around the globe will benefit from concrete guidance on improving safety and health in one of the world's oldest manufacturing sectors. Experts from governments and employers and workers' organizations have adopted a code of practice on safety and health in textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear, the first of these industries. Based on international labor standards and other sectoral guidelines, the code provides comprehensive and practical advice on how to eliminate, reduce, and control all major hazards and risks. This includes chemical substances, ergonomic and physical hazards, tools, machines, and equipment, as well as building and fire safety. More than 60 million workers around the globe will benefit from the new code, which will be of particular importance to developing countries and emerging economies. Next slide, please. Having spent the past 50 years regulating, enforcing, and in particular promoting occupational safety and health, I can personally attest to the fact that the adoption of this ILO code of practice is a milestone in the textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear industry. This is what Jukka Takala, who is the chair of the experts meeting that adopted the code. And Dr. Jukka Takala is also the president of the International Commission on Occupational Health. And this is really rewarding that ICO is also represented as the chair of the experts meeting on adoption of this code. We want to ensure that Rana Plaza will never happen again, said Kamrul Anam, worker vice chair, referring to the 2013 Bangladesh garment factory building collapse, in which more than 1,000 people died. If everyone commits to translating the provisions in this code into action, we can ensure that no worker in Bangladesh or any other country will ever have to risk their life in a garment factory again. Next slide. The textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear industries have been hit hard by the COVID-19 crisis. Thousands of enterprises have been forced to stop production, leading to millions of workers losing their livelihoods. Occupational health and safety is a priority for the employers across the world, said employers vice chair John Packett. We are confident this code of practice will provide a practical basis for employers, workers, governments to work together to advance occupational safety and health prevention culture in the textile, clothing, leather, and footwear manufacturing. Worldwide, about 2.8 million workers die every year from work-related injuries and diseases in different sectors. A further 160 million workers suffer from work-related diseases, and 374 million workers experience non-fatal injuries. More than 4% of the world's annual gross domestic product, that is GDP, is lost as a consequence of work-related injuries and diseases. Next slide. We acknowledge and support the pivotal role the ILO has to play in strengthening both national and sectoral occupational safety and health, that is OSH systems, said Government Vice Chair Dacian Falkman. With this code of practice on safety and health, and thanks to the excellent contributions of employers, workers, and governments, we are now equipped with occupational safety and health tools and approaches the textiles, clothing, leather, and footwear industries and their supply chains need to ensure a safer and brighter future for all. Director of the ILO Sectoral Policies Department, Elite Van added, the COVID-19 pandemic has reminded all of us of how important safety and health and a human-centered approach are if we want to build forward better. I'm hopeful that as these industries rebound, the new code of practice will serve as a basis for developing national or company OSH management systems and contribute to the overall improvements of working conditions in this sector and beyond. Next slide. So after the ILO code on occupational safety and health, we now turn back to an important report, the health argument for climate action. This is the COP26 special report on climate change and health. This report was unveiled this week, and the contents of this report are shown on the right side. That is, commit to a healthy recovery. Our health is not negotiable. Harness the health benefits of climate action. Build health resilience to climate risks. Create energy systems that protect and improve climate and health. Reimagine urban environment, transport and mobility. Protect and restore nature as the foundation of our health. Promote healthy, sustainable and resilient food systems. Finance a healthier, fairer and greener future to save lives. Listen to the health community and prescribe urgent climate action. So we shall take a look as to what all these 10 actions on the ground are all about. So these 10 actions that I just mentioned, we will take up each one of them separately in terms of what actually has to be done on the ground. Next slide, please. Now, this is an overview of climate sensitive health risks where injury and mortality from weather events, heat related illnesses, respiratory illnesses, vector-borne diseases, and other zoonosis, vector-borne diseases, malnutrition, and food non-communicable diseases, and mental and psychological health. They occur. There are vulnerability due to health system capacity and resilience, vulnerability factors, and vulnerability exposure pathways. This results due to climate change. So climate and climate sensitive health risks are related because the vulnerability gets heightened or increased due to the climate change, and health of the human beings suffer. The health system and facilities outcomes also are important, but more important is the health outcome. Next slide, please. Now, first is align climate and health goals. Align COVID-19 recovery efforts with the Paris Agreement goals and the WHO manifesto for a healthy and green recovery. Support a fossil fuel recovery, commit to 100% green stimulus spending, and an end to all fossil fuel subsidies while also ensuring energy access for all. Third, prevent and prepare for the next pandemic. Improve the global capacity for pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Fourth, include health in all policies, strengthen and support implementation of the health in all policies approach at the national and subnational level. And the fifth, commit to vaccine equity and address the inequalities or inequities that lie at the root of the current climate and health crisis. Next slide, please. Our health is not negotiable. The 5 actions that are required. Number 1, close the 1.5 degrees centigrade gap to stay alive, led lead a step change in ambition and submit ambitious, healthy climate plans. Second, scale up finances for vulnerable countries to tackle the climate and health crisis. That is, rebuild trust in the Paris process by delivering on the $100 billion year climate finance goal. Third, step up support for adaptation and resilience. That is, operationalize the global goal on adaptation. Fourth, increase action on loss and damage by addressing the loss of life and damage to health that vulnerable countries and communities are facing. Fifth, finalize the Paris Agreement rulebook. That is, operationalize the most powerful global agreement to protect people and the planet. Next, please. The third one, harness the health benefits of climate action. 3 actions are required. First, maximize and measure the health co-benefits of climate action at all levels of governance. By commit to, promote, account for, and monitor the health co-benefits from climate interventions and reflect them in decision-making. Second, honor everyone's right to health. Recognize the human right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and adopt policies and processes that safeguard this right. Third, bolster the science of health and climate change. Help close knowledge gaps and build capacity to research the health impacts of climate change and the health co-benefits of climate action. Next, please. This is the fourth dimension, build health resilience to climate risks by 3 actions. Regularly assess health vulnerabilities and adaptation capacities by conducting iterative climate change and health vulnerability and adaptation assessments. Second, develop and implement an evidence-based adaptation plan for health by regularly assessing health vulnerabilities and adaptation capacities and develop an ambitious health national adaptation plan, HNAP. Third, by strengthening the climate resilience and environmental sustainability of health systems and facilities by improving access to and affordability of climate resilient and environmentally sustainable care while strengthening the capacity of health systems and facilities to protect and improve the health of all people in an unstable and changing climate. Next, please. This is what climate resilience is all about. On the right are healthcare facilities. On the left are the building blocks of health systems. Climate resilience involves leadership and governance, health workforce, essential medical products and technologies, and service delivery. For each of these, you require action on the ground. For climate resilience on the healthcare, healthy people, and healthy environment, you require healthy workforce, energy, infrastructure, technologies and products, and water, sanitation, hygiene, and healthcare waste. All these are linked with each other. That is what is shown in this functions to strengthen the climate resilience and environmental sustainability of health systems and facilities. Next slide, please. In the action points on create energy systems that protect and improve climate and health, there are 5 actions to be done. Phase out polluting fossil fuels, avoid environmental, health, and economic damage by delivering sustainable energy for all. Second, let us breathe clean air by adopting WHO air quality guidelines and tackle air pollution. Third, invest in clean solutions for household energy, bring clean heating, lighting, and cooking solutions to the billions of people who currently lack them. Fourth, power the health sector with clean energy, ensure all health systems and facilities have access to renewable energy. Number 5, ensure a just transition for workers and communities, provide support, training, and opportunities for those transitioning out of the fossil fuel sector, and ensure occupational health and social safeguards for workers in a clean energy sector. Next slide. This is the table which shows PM 2.5, where 2005 AQG level and 2021 AQG level are shown, where each level has been more stringent to ensure that people's health remains at the center of global climate action plan. PM 2.5, PM 10, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide levels are now 2021 AQG levels are more stringent. Next slide, please. Reimagine urban environments, transport and mobility by three actions. By phase out internal combustion engine and reduce private car use, end the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles and support a shift away from private car use. Second, prioritize walking, cycling and public transport. Prioritize walking and cycling as healthy, low carbon modes of transport. Third, create people-centered cities by integrating health and equity and nature considerations into urban and transport planning to create compact and future-proof cities. Next slide, please. Protect and restore nature as the foundation of our health. Action points are three: end our destruction of nature, halt the destruction and degradation of biodiversity and carbon-rich ecosystems as soon as possible. Second, protect and restore the ecosystems we all depend on by committing to protecting at least 30% of the land and sea by 2030, prioritizing areas of high importance for biodiversity and the delivery of ecosystem services. Third is to recognize the interconnections between human, animal, and ecosystem health. Integrate a One Health approach to ensure prevention and early detection of health risks. Next slide, please. Fourth is promote nature-based solutions and a nature-based recovery, avoid additional harm to nature, and build forward better from the pandemic through nature-based solutions that jointly support biodiversity, health, and climate action. The fifth one is protect people and planet by implementing new global biodiversity framework, by committing to reversing biodiversity loss by 2030, and develop ambitious plans and programs to support an ambitious post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Next slide, please. Promote healthy, sustainable, and resilient food systems. Nourish our future by improving access to diets that are nutritious, sustainable, and affordable. Second, remove harmful agriculture subsidies by removing financial and other incentives that support high emission, unhealthy food options and agricultural practice. Third, support a just agricultural transition by prioritizing a rapid transition away from unsuitable farming practices that damage the environment and risk human health. Fourth, mainstream biodiversity for nutrition and health by mainstreaming biodiversity interventions in food systems to strengthen resilience, increase food security, improve nutrition, lower emissions, and protect our vital natural resources. Next slide, please. Financing a healthier, fairer, and greener future to save lives. First, stop funding pollution and harmful subsidies for fossil fuels, both domestically and abroad. Second, close the health financing gap by investing in health adaptation and resilience and help close the health financing gap. Third, ensure public finance does no harm by preventing investments in unsustainable and polluting activities that threaten communities' health and well-being. Fourth, provide debt relief to vulnerable nations by showing global solidarity for those most impacted. Next slide. Listen to health community and prescribe urgent climate action. Train the health workforce to respond to climate change, update health curricula, and provide training and support to prepare health work. Second, take climate action in the healthcare sector by transitioning to climate resilient and sustainable healthcare. Third, enable health professional advocacy on climate change and health, supporting peers and colleagues to effectively communicate on climate change and health. Fourth, protect the health of future generations by supporting youth and vulnerable population to protect the health of the future generations. Next slide, please. Next slide. Slide is not visible. I'm waiting for the slide to come. Shivang? Yes, Shivang, are you back? I think there was loss of connectivity.
He is doing it, sir. Just
Yeah. Next slide. Yes. So in conclusion, we can say climate change is the single biggest health threat from facing humanity. And while no one is safe from health impacts of climate change, they are disproportionately felt by the most vulnerable and disadvantaged. Protecting people's health from climate change requires transformational action in every sector, including on energy, transport, nature, food systems, and finance. The public health benefits from implementing these ambitious climate actions far outweigh their costs. Health leaders everywhere have been sounding the alarm on climate change and are increasingly taking steps to protect their communities from worsening climate impacts while reducing their own emissions. The 10 recommendations in this report highlight the priority actions governments need to take to confront the climate crisis, restore biodiversity, and protect health. By enacting these urgent changes, governments can ensure a healthy future for our children, grandchildren, and future generations. How prophetic the statement is. So we now shift over to another topic. Next slide. 2021 Global Conference on Health and Climate Change. Next slide. This is middle weekend of COP26, hybrid format, online and in person. So online is completely free. So just Google 2021 Global Conference on Health and Climate Change and register and spend time on Saturday, November the 6th to attend this Global Conference on Health and Climate Change at Glasgow Caledonian University. And it's completely free if you're attending online. So just register and join online for understanding what health and climate change means all about. Next slide, please. The 2021 Global Conference on Health and Climate Change, with a special focus on climate justice and the healthy and green recovery from COVID-19, will convene on the margins of the COP26 UN Climate Change Conference. The aim of the conference is to call on governments, businesses, institutions, and financial actors to drive a green, healthy, and resilient recovery from COVID-19. The conference will support and highlight countries' ambitious and just nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement that promote and protect health. It will also mobilize the rapidly growing movement of health professionals around the world who are now driving ambitious climate action. The conference will be delivered in a hybrid format with both in-person and virtual speakers and attendees using a dedicated hybrid conferencing platform. Recordings and short videos will be shared to complement the program. Additional materials may also be provided via a dedicated conferencing platform. The conference will include 2 interactive segments dedicated to roundtable discussions for those attending in person and 2 breakout sessions for those attending virtually. The Global Conference on Health and Climate Change is organized by the World Health Organization and the Global Climate and Health Alliance in close collaboration with the Glasgow Caledonian University and its Center for Climate Justice, the UK Health Alliance on Climate Change, the Center on Climate Change and Planetary Health of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and the Wellcome Trust. So please, for this conference, attend. Next slide, please. We take a look at the newly announced scheme by the Prime Minister of India, that is the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission, also known as Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, PMASBY, that aims to strengthen India's critical healthcare network. Next slide, please. Despite nominal hikes in health expenditure, India's health statistics remain deplorable. According to governmental data, India has 1.4 beds per 1,000 people, a doctor per 1,445 people, and 1.7 nurses per 1,000 people. And spending by Central Ministry of Health and Family Welfare percentage is shown in blue as share of the total central expenditure, coming to 2.12%, as share of GDP shown in red as 0.42%. So you can imagine the very low expenditure by government. Next slide. What is the new PMASBY scheme? The scheme aims to beef up health systems and institutions at the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels and prepare them to respond effectively to pandemics and disasters. The scheme comes with an outlay of about 64,180 crore rupees over 6 years. This will be in addition to the National Health Mission. The government says health infrastructure in India did not get ample attention as people, especially in the rural areas, have to run from pillar to post to access healthcare services, which worsens their condition and puts financial strain on patients. Modi said the new scheme aims to tackle this deficiency. Did COVID-19 revive health investments? With COVID-19 exposing gaps in India's healthcare system, the center considered more schemes towards healthcare and started investing in the sector. Increased investments will support research on infectious diseases, including research to generate evidence to inform short-term and medium-term response to pandemics and develop core capacity to deliver the One Health approach to prevent, detect, and respond to outbreaks in humans and animals. The National Health Policy aims to raise public health expenditure from the existing 1.15% to 2.5% of GDP by 2025 in a time-bound manner. Next slide, please. How bad is India's healthcare infrastructure? Despite nominal hikes in health expenditure, India's health statistics remain deplorable. According to government data, India has 1.4 beds per 1,000 people, 1 doctor per 1,445 people, and 1.7 nurses per 1,000 people. According to the World Health Organization, India ranks 184 out of 191 countries in health spending. Next slide. How much does India spend on health? According to 2020 index report by Oxfam India, Nigeria and Bahrain secured the lowest ranks in health spending index. India was at the 155th position, sharing the position with Afghanistan, with both countries allocating less than 4% of their budget on health. The report also found that Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh spent more than India on health. India's health budget is the 4th lowest in the world. Just half of its population has access to even the most essential health services, the report had said. How will PMASBY help bridge this gap? There are 3 major aspects of PMASBY. First is creation of facilities for diagnostics and treatment, under which the health and wellness centers are being opened in villages and cities. There will be facilities for early detection of diseases. Second, the testing network for the diagnosis of diseases will be boosted. About 730 districts of the country will get integrated public health laboratories, for instance. The third aspect is the expansion and strengthening of existing research institutions that study pandemics. Next slide, please. Also, the government of India will set up 2 mobile hospitals for better healthcare response. So there will be definitely addition of health infrastructure on the ground, and this shall be another innovation that will happen on the ground in the next 2-3 years. Next slide, please. From October 25 to 28, the 28th International Symposium on Epidemiology and Occupational Health, organized by the Scientific Committee on Occupational Health and Epidemiology, was organized in a virtual format, but the conference was organized by Montreal people from Canada, the scientific group, which had to happen in physical format. It happened in virtual format because of the pandemic. 4 days and 2 days of pre-conference workshop, 6 days of scientific activity. Next slide. This conference had 675 participants from 63 countries, 227 from North America, 74 from South America, 246 from Europe, 70 from Asia, and 52 from Africa, and 6 from Australia and New Zealand. So all the continents were represented, 98 early career, 323 students, and 23 low and middle income countries bursaries were there. Next slide, please. I had the privilege to announce the early career awardee, and he was Botham Betume Maboso from WITS Health Consortium, University of Cape Town. His oral presentation, having the title of The Value of Plain Chest Radiograph as a diagnostic tool for tuberculosis related to gene expert among ex-gold miners in Lesotho was considered the best, and his background as an early career awardee deserved to be given recognition. And so the EPICO Management Committee, of which I am a member, decided to award the first early career award to Dr. Beton Biotome Maboso. Next slide, please. This is the abstract which got him this award. What he did, he analyzed the medical history information, chest x-rays, and gene expert test results in a group of ex-miners between 2017 and 18 at Mefitang Occupational Health Service Center, Lesotho. He excluded those on tuberculosis treatment or those within 12 months of tuberculosis treatment completion at the time of the visits. Chest x-rays were read by a medical doctor with training and experience in the reading of pneumoconiosis and tuberculosis. A set of 300 of these chest x-rays were cross-read by 2 occupational medicine specialists with mining medicine experience, with 80 to 90% agreement with clinic readings. Results were analyzed, information on 2,572 subjects. The prevalence of active tuberculosis on gene expert was 3%, with chest x-ray sensitivity of 0.97, specificity of 0.41, positive predictive value of 0.05, and negative predictive value of 0.99. So the conclusion was a chest x-ray negative for tuberculosis is a valuable tool in ruling out active tuberculosis disease among ex-gold miners. However, its poor predictive value, given the high background prevalence of silicosis and previous tuberculosis population, makes bacteriological confirmation necessary before initiating tuberculosis treatment in ex-gold miners. So this is definitely a research, and his otherwise biography also deserved to be recognized in an early career award by the EPICO Management Committee. Next slide, please. Another interesting presentation was this, where the distribution of all doctors to positions of total weekly working hours from 2016 to 2019 was presented by Norwegian Medical Association. Next slide, please. I'll share this session I had shared in the EPICO 2021, and I found this very interesting for India as well. The balance between adequate time spent on patient care and maintaining work-home balance is challenging for doctors. Both for treatment outcomes and for doctors' well-being, we need longitudinal studies of total work hours and of time spent on direct patient care. To compare the weekly working hours and time spent on direct patient care in 2016 and 2019 for doctors working different job positions in Norway. So this study tested that, and results showed that from 2016 to 2019, the weekly working hours increased significantly for male general practitioners, 48.7 hours to 50.9 hours, and male doctors in hospital management, 48.2 hours to 50.5 hours. It remained significantly unchanged for female general practitioners, female doctors in hospital management, female senior consultants, and for female and male specialist registrars. The proportion of total work time spent on direct patient care was similar both between both genders and did not change significant from 2016 to 2019. So in 2019, it was highest for general practitioners, 65.5%, followed by senior hospital consultants, 43.5%, specialty registrars, 39.8%, and doctors in hospital management, 34.3%. Conclusion was, compared to stipulated work hours in Norway, which is 37.5 hours per week, doctors of both genders work long hours, and length has increased significantly for some groups from 2016 to 2019. Hospital doctors spend less than 50% of the time on direct patient care. Monitoring and regulating work hours can be useful intervention for patient care and for doctor well-being. So very good study where evidence is collected on occupational health of healthcare workers. Next slide. Another paper which should draw attention in India is the marginal part-time workers and what happens to them, how much risk they are exposed to. Next slide, please. Work environment characteristics among marginal part-time workers in Denmark. This was studied by Helena Beth Nelson. In 2015, around 15% of the Danish workforce had marginal part-time work, less than 15 hours per week. Yet, not much is known about marginal part-time workers' work environment. Compared with full-time workers, marginal part-time workers less often reported too little time for their work tasks and struggling to keep deadlines. However, marginal part-time workers more often reported lower influence on how and when to solve work tasks and lower authority. Furthermore, they reported less help and acknowledgement from colleagues and less interesting and inspiring work tasks and low job satisfaction. In addition, marginal part-time workers more frequently reported having an occupational accident in the past year and poor guidance and instruction to work safely. Results of negative social relations in the workplace and physical workload were ambiguous. And conclusion was marginal part-time workers report less quantitative job demands, but also less influence at work, less support from colleagues, less job satisfaction, and poorer safety. So that was interesting that part-time workers suffer more jeopardy in terms of occupational safety and health. Next slide, please. We take a look at the 33rd International Congress on Occupational Health, which is going to happen from 6 to 10 February 2022 in virtual format from two places in the world, that is Melbourne, Australia, and Rome in Italy, together, jointly organizing this 5-day event. Next slide, please. The 33rd International Congress on Occupational Health will have a theme, sharing solutions in occupational health through and beyond the pandemic. Next slide. So the deadline for registration is now 14 of November. It has been extended. Earlier it was 9th of November. Now it is 14 November. You can register at lower rates. Next slide. So if you're an ICO member, you have to pay only 250 euros. But if you're an ICO member from low and middle income countries like India, you pay only 130 euros instead of 250 euros. So after 14 November, the rates are going to rise. Now it is, instead of 9 November, it's 14 November. You pay only 130 euros if you are from India. And if you are an ICO member, so students from India, you pay only 50 euros. Next slide, please. This is the schedule where opening keynote speaker will be Sir Michael Marmot of University College, UK. And there will be other speakers in addition to Soumya Swaminathan of the World Health Organization, the chief scientist. Next slide, please. These are the range of scientific topics and themes under which you can submit, you can participate and understand what is latest in occupational health in the world. So with this, I conclude this episode of OcuHealthscapes. So we shall meet again on Friday, the last Friday of the month, next month, November 26 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you for your patience listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv Jain, sir. It was a nice deliberation of the OcuHealthscape and the occupational health events which have undertaken for last 1 month, and you have very comprehensively you have covered most of the topics, and this is from the lead poisoning to what are the sources of lead exposure, especially in children and the pregnant women and adults. As a WHO representative, they told that in adults it is mainly due to the occupational exposure. So for we all in industries, we have to be very careful, and the sources which she said that mainly they were from leaded petrols, water pipes, and the paints. So petrol and water pipes they have already taken care of, and the paints are also under observation, and accordingly they are taking necessary actions. Another important aspect was the air pollution that we are all worried about since we all stay in Delhi and NCR. So this air pollution is a big problem, and you have given the 10-point action plan which government is taking to tackle this air pollution. That is also very important for every one of us, and individually also, all citizens, all members, all people, they have to be very careful to cooperate in this particular endeavor. And based on these 10 action points, we have to, wherever we can contribute at least with the coming Diwali festival. We should do some lightning, but avoid the firecrackers. And this will be a great job for preventing the pollution in Delhi. And then another issue was the global warming, and this draft code of practice on safety and health in textile, clothing, leather, and the footwear. So in we have to go through this particular draft, and wherever we can put some inputs over there, we can definitely contribute. The next is the health argument for the climate action. That was also very deliberately detailed deliberations were there, and we are told about this global conference on health and climate change 2021, which will be there on November 6th, Saturday, that we all can join after registration. And that will be an important, because since we are all working for the environment and occupational health, especially from INOC initiatives. Then what is very important from the government point of view, which they have started, especially initiative of our Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister Atmanirbhar Swasthya Bharat Yojana. That will definitely is a great landmark in the history of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And as we all know, that health infrastructure in India was not up to date, and during this COVID pandemic, we have shown that to the world that we are Atmanirbhar and we can do, but only thing, some guiding forces should be there, and that has been started now with Prime Minister Atmanirbhar Swasthya Bharat Yojana. So we hope that by the time this whole project is implemented, the disease and suffering in India, they can be properly taken care of. Then Dr. Rajeev Jain also deliberated upon this EPICO, which was recently held from October 25 to 28, and this was held in Montreal, Canada, on virtual platform. So we all those who have been have registered, they have attended the conference, and this EPICO 2021 was also a great landmark in Indian occupational health history, because Dr. Rajeev Jain sir has represented the scientific committee, and he has again been elected for this scientific committee from 2021 to 2024. And the 2023 will be EPICO will be organized by the Mumbai branch of IAOH, and 33rd ICO Congress, which will be held in February 2022. We all got the information that that abstract accepted extract will be soon announced within one day or two, and the date of early registration has already it has been extended, and we all can now like after, if we forget during this Diwali festival season, we can take our own time to get ourselves registered, because that is a very important conference and it will be held virtually. So any questions from the panelists, if they have, they can unmute themselves, or they can raise their hands and we will take their questions. Dr. Sriniket Mishra or Dr. Tyagraj sir? I think we had a long discussion on the occupational aspects, which were there for last one month, and All these recordings will be available on the YouTube, that is Enoch DigiConnect webinar platform. And I would like to ask Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain sir whether these EPICO recordings, they are available on the YouTube channel or somewhere on the website.
No, they're unfortunately they're not available, but on the platform of EPICO, the recordings of all the sessions is available for registered delegates for next 3 months. So anybody who is registered with a username and password, he can access all the sessions, including the concurrent paper presentation and all the keynote addresses, symposia. The one thing I would like to point out that all the abstracts are available freely on the Occupational and Environmental Medicine Journal, which is published by BMJ Group. They are available. I've shared the link on WhatsApp as well. So one can go through all the abstracts. For the first time, EPICO and OEM have reached an understanding that all the abstract of the EPICO shall be published by the BMJ Group, which is a Occupational and Environmental Medicine Journal, which is one of the highest impact factor journal in the world in occupational and environmental medicine. So all the abstracts are available free of cost for all the people in the world at the moment.
Okay, right, sir. So that is great. So Dr. Tyagaraja sir, you any concluding remarks from your side, sir? You have to unmute, sir.
He's not able to unmute, it seems.
Unable to
Yes.
unmute.
Hello.
now-
At the outset, it gives me great pleasure, sir. It's a wonderful topic and wonderful lecture by you. Thank you very much, sir.
You have to disconnect from one of the devices.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's very nice lecture. We have heard. Wonderful. And we'll see you, sir, tomorrow. Tomorrow is a very good day for us.
Okay, right. Thank you, sir. So I think we have covered a lot of topics today, and the recent developments which were there in the occupational health field and the environmental health. So thank you very much, sir, for making us aware of all these interesting topics, and we all request all our industrial physicians and occupational doctors to go through the recordings if they have missed the session, and these are available on our Enoch DigiConnect webinar YouTube channel, and we will come with the same 12th episode of this OcuHealth Escapes next month. That will be on
November 26th.
6th of November at 6:30 p.m. So thank you all very much, sir. And tomorrow we'll be waiting everyone for the COVID epi updates and a great panel discussion on the vaccine policies.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you.